is up, YouTube? That's here, bringing you guys an extra special discussion video. Today, we are going to be talking about my VGC 2019 Sun Series top 20 Pokemon tier list. Now, this is going to be personally my own tier list and top 20. This isn't just ripped off of whatever, you know, it says on Showdown or on Battlespar or anything. This is my own list, and I'm going to be giving detailed explanations for why I think each Pokemon is rated, the place it's rated, the tier that it's in, and hopefully you guys agree with me. I actually want to start a discussion. I want you guys to actually make your own list and leave those in the comments, because I'm interested in seeing how many people agree with me. And please, if you do not agree with me, leave a comment and let me know, because you know, I'm definitely never starting a discussion. So we're going to start things off. Like I said, there are 3 tiers. There's the S tier, which is the best Pokemon. There's the A tier right below it. There's 2 tiers of A tier Pokemon, and then there's 2 tiers of B tier Pokemon. Now, these tiers can go all the way down to, you know, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. But, you know, since we're only doing the top 20 Pokemon, we're going to be putting 4 Pokemon in each tier for a total of 20. So, without further ado, we're going to start the list off right here. So, starting off the list, we're going to be starting off with the #1 Pokemon. This Pokemon is amazing. It is not a restricted mon, believe it or not, but I'm sure most of you guys know what it is. It's going to be Big Boy Incineroar. Incineroar is going to be the #1 Pokemon on our list. And, you know, a lot of you guys are probably surprised that it's not a restricted mon being #1. Probably a lot of you guys are thinking, wow, no Xerneas, no Kyogre, no Lunala, no, nothing like that. It's actually going to be Incineroar. And the reason Incineroar is #1 on our list is because it is a not restricted mon, which is going to play a huge amount of value on our list. Our list is going to be all about value and how much resources you commit in bringing a Pokemon to the team, and how much resources it takes for an opponent to actively get rid of that Pokemon. So Incineroar is a perfect example. It has Fake Out, it has Intimidate, it has amazing offensive and defensive typing. This Pokemon can switch in on any move and then safely apply like a Fake Out to regain momentum into a game, and that's something that most restricted mons can't even do. And as the meta develops, there's currently not really that many Pokemon that really punish use of Incineroar. We're gonna get down in like the lower ends of the list. We're gonna see a couple Pokemon that I think are speed creeping, well, not really speed creeping, but, you know, becoming more popular as Incineroar checks. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later, but obviously Incineroar is #1. It's probably your #1 too, and you know, that makes a lot of sense. So going on to number 2 is gonna be my boy Xerneas. Xerneas, the deer is here, and Xerneas, I think, is the second best Pokemon in this series. Obviously, you know, when they first announced the format, everyone thought it was going to be, you know, just Ultra Series from the start. Like, oh, Primal Groudon's going to be so good. Oh, Primal Kyogre's going to be so good. Mega Rayquaza, Ultra Necrozma, and all those Pokemon aren't in the Sun Series. But the one powerhouse that is Power Herb Xerneas. This thing is just the best restricted mon in the format, I feel. You know, I've seen some people talk about it somewhere. When you're playing with a Xerneas team, you feel so in control versus any team that's not running Xerneas. Even if they have a ton of ways to check your Xerneas, you feel like you're dictating the pace just because you have this Pokemon. Like, this Pokemon would be busted even if it didn't have a Power Herb. Like, even if you had to run, like, 50% berries or choice items, this Pokemon would still see use even if the Power Herb was banned, and it would still probably be in the upper echelons of the A tier or even the S tier. So, Xerneas is the second Pokemon on my list, and, yeah, I really just think it's the best restricted. Starting up number 3 on my list, we're going to go with Groudon. Now, a lot of you guys might be a little bit surprised by Groudon and that I put it in the S tier. A lot of you guys probably look at Groudon and you're like, that's definitely an A tier restricted mon, but Groudon is so good. It's because Kyogre is so prominent that I think Groudon's good, and obviously, Groudon is the #1 partner for Xerneas. Sure, it doesn't have its fire typing from its primal form, but this Pokemon demands so much respect, and we're going to see so many Pokemon on the list that Groudon helps to check, and that are in the format just to try to beat Groudons from checking them. Like, Groudon's one of the few Pokemon that I feel has a great matchup versus Incineroar, and it's personally, you know, like a great favorite of mine. Remember, this is my list, but I have Groudon as a 3rd slot. I think this Pokemon, if Xerneas wasn't in the formats, you know, we would see a lot of Groudon teams that were just based around this Pokemon. We saw this Pokemon do really well around at the Memphis Regional and the Philly Regional. We saw a good amount of Groudons, I feel. And also, we see like a lot of Chlorophyll mons. Like, this Pokemon just existing gives a lot of value to Pokemon like Venusaur being relatively used. Like, Jumpluff's pretty good. There's a lot of good Chlorophyll mons right now, and I feel like Pokemon like Shiftry have a lot of potential to be used just because Groudon's Sun lets their Chlorophyll work to its fullest potential. So, Groudon packing that big drought is going to be number 3. So going into number 4, no one is going to call this pick. This is a That's a +1 pick for the 4th strongest Pokemon, the last Pokemon in the S tier. You're probably thinking it's some restricted mon, but it's actually Smeargle. Smeargle is the dumbest Pokemon in every single form. This Pokemon can learn every single move. And remember, the list is not just about what Ubers and Legendaries are so good. This list is about the amount of resources it takes you to have this Pokemon in the game, in your team. Not resources in like time to get it, but resources to include it in your team. How much do you have to build around this Pokemon to put it in your team? Do you have to, or is it going to be just a Pokemon that's splashed into the team, and your opponent then has to dedicate a lot of resources in their team preview, in their team building, to be able to check it? Since Smeargle learned any move, and it doesn't cost a restricted slot, it doesn't even technically cost your sash, it doesn't cost your scarf, it doesn't cost your, like, a mentor, but it doesn't cost any of those, but it can excel in all of those sets. And it also gets access to moves like Transform, which means it can transform into another restricted mon and give you technically like a 3rd restricted mon. It has access to like Spore, lovely because it's seen a lot of play. It usually gets Follow Me, Wide Guard. I've been talking about using an Encore Smeargle. This thing gets Fake Out. This thing gets so many moves that I feel just having it in your team completely flips how your opponent is going to play the game, and they have to dedicate so many extra resources and change their playstyle just to deal with your Smeargle, that means Smeargle is in the S tier for me, even if you don't even want to bring it to your team. Alright, it's actually about time to start the A tier. We're going to be going into the A tier. This one's going to come as no surprise. I bet you guys all thought this was going to be an S tier Pokemon. It's going to be Kyogre. Kyogre, the counterpart to Groudon. When the format was first announced, Kyogre was by far and away the #1 restricted mon about a couple months ago. And yeah, Choice Scarf Kyogre still sees a lot of play. You see it paired with Serena. There's a lot of things that like Choice Scarf Kyogre can just automatically win. Like if your opponent doesn't have Wide Guard, if they're not packing Groudon, or if you play it correctly, you can just come with Kyogre, click 2 Water Spouts, and the game is over. It leads itself to some of that, I want to call it like crackhead playstyle. That's what a lot of players on Twitter call it. You know, you just lead Kyogre Serena, you feint to break Wide Guards, feint to break Protects, and you slam in a Choice Scarf Water Spout, or Choice Scarf Origin Pulse, or, you know, a Choice Scarf Thunder, or Ice Beam. This Pokemon has a decent speed tiering and can deal massive amount of damage if it has its weather up. So I don't think we've seen the last of Kyogre. You know, a lot of people thinking Kyogre's going to fall out of favor as the format gets older, but I feel that Kyogre's definitely going to be an A tier restricted mon for the remainder of the format. It's super solid, and I'm really interested in seeing more unique sets with items like, you know, Choice Specs for Tailwind, or maybe even bulky berry sets, or even an Adrenaline set. I think that would be really cool moving forward. So after this, we're going to be moving on to Lunala. Lunala actually, a lot of people probably thought this would be in Smeargle slots in the in the S tier, but no, Lunala's going to be here, and I didn't necessarily want to include it here. I actually wanted to put a different Pokemon here, but after recent performance at Memphis Regionals, winning Memphis Regionals with a 252 attack investment Lunala, not special attack, he made his Pokemon incorrectly and put his full investment into the attack stat of Lunala and still won the regional with it. And that just shows that this Pokemon has so much potential. Just one of the safest restricted mons. Like with Xerneas, you know, you're really open to, you know, getting nuked turn 1, or you can get taunted or knockoffed. And, you know, with a lot of other setters, like Lunala can set up Tailwind and Trick Room, and it can't get Fake Out because it's a Ghost type. Also, it gets like Big Moongeist Beam, Stabbed Psyshock, and a bunch of other mons. We've seen Scarf and Spec sets be very popular. I've also seen Seeds sets, like, you know, they pair it with like some sort of Tapu, get a Seeds boost so you don't take that huge damage from a ×4 super effective knockoff because you don't have an item. So I've seen Lunala, and I actually think that it deserves to be in the upper echelons of the A tier. And let's see if it actually breaks the S tier as the format evolves. But, you know, I think A tier is solid for this mon, and I'm actually really happy that it even sees play in the first place, because it is definitely one of my favorite Pokemon. So after this, we are going to be seeing Yveltal pop up into the, what is this? Are we, into the 7th slot of my tier list here. Yveltal is going to be in number 7, and I think that Yveltal is one of those Pokemon that can win a lot of games by itself. It gets recovery moves, it has an amazing Dark Aura. Remember, since Incineroar is number 1, these Pokemon go so well together. Yveltal's Dark Aura powers up the Incineroar's knockoff to deal a ton of extra damage. It gets potential to set up Tailwinds. It gets potential to, go for big sucker punches. A lot of the Pokemon on this list actually get one-shotted by, like, Life Orb, Yveltal knockoff if you're not intimidated. Gets access to Foul Play. This Pokemon can do so many things, and we have not seen the full potential of this Pokemon yet. So there's so many sets it can do. I mean, I personally, like in 2016, I was running Weakness Policy of Yveltal for a while, and just full healing every single turn with, like, ×2 Oblivion Wings. Like, there's so many things this Pokemon can do, and I'm excited to see how it gets used for the remainder of the film. The last Pokemon in the top part of the A tier. The top part of the A tier, this is kind of like, I guess, the A+ tier, is going to be Solgaleo. Solgaleo is a Pokemon that I bet a bunch of you would not include this high, and for those of you that are including it this high on your list, shout outs to you because you know what's up in the meta right now. This Pokemon is amazing, and the reason it's so high on the list is because let's look at the rest of the Pokemon. Like Xerneas is super solid, Groudon is super solid, Kyogre is super solid, all these other restricted mons are super solid, but Solgaleo is a Pokemon that can be splashed with any of those Pokemon and give you exactly what you need to succeed. Like some of those Pokemon, like if you're bringing Kyogre, right, and their whole team is grass Pokemon, like they have 6 grass Pokemon. Of course, that's not gonna happen. You're probably not gonna bring your Kyogre. You're gonna be like, you know what? I don't really want to water spout those. That's not the matchup for Kyogre, Same thing. If you have a Xerneas team and they have 6 steel types, I know it's not going to happen. This is an extreme example. You might think, you know what? It's probably not the best idea to bring Xerneas. I'm going to work with other stuff. Solgaleo, no matter what happens, you're going to bring your Solgaleo to every single game that you bring it to. It has so much splash ability. This Pokemon gets Flare Blitz. It gets a stabbed Zen Headbutt, stabbed Sun Steel, Sun Strike, or whatever that huge steel type is. It gets access to Superpower, Wild Charge, Wide Guard, Trick Room. This Pokemon can do so many things, and note that its ability is the reason why it's so good. Since Incineroar is the best Pokemon in the format, it packs epic Intimidate, Solgaleo's Full Metal Body makes it immune to Intimidate. It works kind of like Hypercutter did for a lot of other Pokemon. It's technically the same thing. So you're unintimidated, which means you're always going to be dealing the exact amount of damage that you want to deal. So you just slap an Expert Belt, slap a Life Orb, slap whatever item you want on this guy because he's always going to work. And you have the damage to one-shot almost any Pokemon in the format under any circumstance. Solgaleo is one of the best restrictive mons, and I really, really like it. So far, we are 8 Pokemon into the list. I want to know, is it going the way that you're expecting it to go? Is there anything that you thought you might see that you haven't seen so far? Hopefully you're 8 for 8, but let's keep on going. We're going to keep on going. We're going to start the top of the second A tier, and we're going to start off with a Pokemon that, again, is probably going to be pretty surprising. You're probably not going to really expect this one, and it's going to be Mewtwo. And you're probably thinking, like, Mewtwo's probably not even on your list, but it fills about a similar role to Solgaleo, but I had to knock it down just a notch. It has a little bit more speed, but it sacrifices some of the versatility. Sure, it's a special attacker, but Mewtwo does a lot of the things that Solgaleo does. It can Trick Room just like Solgaleo can. It can't Wide Guard, but what it does have is super effective moves that are going to deal a set amount of damage to almost every Pokemon in the format. Hit Incineroar with Aura Spheres. Xerneas gets one-shotted by Psy Strike if you have like a Psychic Terrain or like a Life Orb boost or something like that. Groudon takes big damage from anything Mewtwo dishes out. Same for Kyogre. Lunala takes big damage from 4 times super effective Shadow Ball, and Mewtwo can deal a lot of damage, and I don't think that people are necessarily using this Pokemon correctly. Think about it. Think about Mewtwo. How many Mewtwo's have you fought in this format? And for those that you have fought, have you been surprised by how well that they've actually, or surprised by the impact they've had in the game? You may actually think like, oh man, Mewtwo, nah, I'm finding it's Mewtwo. But then you get hit with that like Choice Scarf Mewtwo, and you got like no answers for that. You have no answers for it. It's a Pokemon that people aren't building for. So I feel it's actually well deserving in this list because it doesn't take a lot of resources to just throw a Mewtwo into your team. It doesn't take a lot of team building to be able to require Mewtwo to hit its fullest potential. So that's why I'm including it in the A tier. Alright, next Pokemon on the list, it's going to be Stakataka. So this is the first Pokemon we've had in a while that is not a restricted Pokemon. It is a legendary Pokemon. It is an Ultra Beast. And we're going to be including Stakataka, and you may be wondering, wow, that's actually pretty high. I think Stakataka is probably one of the better Trick Room setters in the format. It doesn't take a restricted slot. This Pokemon does not take a ton of investment to just include in your team. You can just throw Stakataka in your team. You can use it as an anti-Trickermon. You can use it as a wide guard setter. It's a great check to Xerneas. Against like Groudon, you know, they can't really Precipice Blade it because you can pop that wide guard. You have Rock Slides for Incineroar, and it also gets access to a bunch of other moves. Like I said, it had Gyro Ball, Rock Slide. It gets access to like Super Power, Ally Switch. This Pokemon has so many really cool moves that no one is really talking about. And personally, like this is a that's a +1 call putting it this high on the list. I just feel so confident with Stakataka. Like, I feel that I can do so many more things with this Pokemon just because it's in my team. This is one of those Pokemon that, like, man, I'm totally losing, but since I have a Stakataka, I can come back from almost anything, and that versatility is why I'm putting it so high on my list. Next Pokemon up on the list is going to be Taboo Koko. First Tapu on the list is going to be Koko. And you may be wondering why Koko over any of the other Tapus. Now, it's its speed tiering that sets it apart from all the other things. This Pokemon can hold Scarf. I've seen Scarf Koko so frequently on Showdown because it checks all these other Pokemon. You just hit them so hard, so fast, and they don't expect it. Like, they kind of expect it, but you just bop them with huge electric attacks. It can be physical or special. This thing has access to Taunt. It gets access to Skydrop, which isn't that good in this format because these things are so heavy. But, you know, this Pokemon can do so many things. I've also recently used, like, a Psych Up Koko and paired with Xerneas. But the real big thing about Koko that makes it pretty good in this format is its Electric Train makes so you can't get put to sleep. We're seeing at least one sleep Pokemon using like Spore, Sleep Powder, Lovely Kiss in almost every team. Like, we're seeing a lot of sleep in this format. Koko just comes in and says, no, you can't sleep me, and I'm going to outspeed your whole team. It's a very safe lead, and let's look at a lot of these Pokemon. Like, I was talking earlier about, like, Lunala, Solgaleo. A lot of these Pokemon and a lot of the other Pokemon on this list are common users of, like, the Electric Seeds to give a big defense boost. Like, I've seen Electric Seeds on Lunala. I've seen it on Yveltal, Solgaleo, Mewtwo. I've seen it on all those things, and so this is a Pokemon that can activate those seeds and be really hyper-aggressive from turn 1, and that's why it's the first Tapu on my tier list here, coming in at looks like 11th for Tapu. Moving on to the last mon in the A tier. We're the last mon in the A tier already, and this is a Pokemon that probably a lot of you would probably put a little bit higher, but you know, looking back on it, you know, there's not a lot of room. So we're gonna put Kartana here, and Kartana is the perfect example of a Pokemon that does not take that much you know, requirements or team building around it to just include in your team, but it has a huge impact and it takes a ton of resources from your opponent to actually deal with it. Now, Kartana can be sashed, it can be scarfed, it can be vested, there can be so many other sets. It's very similar to Smeargle in that it has like 4 or 5 different modes that it can really play in, and they all take completely different lead options to deal with. Because, like, if I were to have, like, Kartana Lele, you know, you can't just lead Incineroar and go Fake Out. So you can't Fake Out me, which means I'm going to be guaranteed to get a Tailwind up. If you're fine with me getting a Tailwind up, that's cool, but not everyone is. And what if I'm just, like, not, what if I'm not Tailwind? And what if I'm just, like, Choice Banded and I just one-shot whatever Pokemon you're going for, and your whole plan was to try and stop a Tailwind set? You know, the things that beat each of those respective sets are completely opposite to the things that you need to beat them. Like, that's one of the strengths of Kartana. Like, if you want to beat the Sash set, the Sash Tailwind set, you're going to lose to the Choice Scarf set or the Choice Band set. And I really think that's a cool mechanic that really applies only to Kartana in this exact situation. It's like, look at all these other Pokemon, and look at all these restricted Pokemons. There's only really 1 or 2 ways you can play them. And, you know, the way that you beat Groudon is going to be the same way that you beat Groudon every single time. Same with Xerneas, you know. You're going to set up some speed control, but you're going to be slamming in a huge physical attack into the Xerneas. And technically the same thing applies to Kartana. You're going to beat it with a fire attack most times anyways. But, you know, the difference with Kartana is its playstyle allows it to avoid and play around those fire attacks in different ways depending on how you're going to use it, and only you know how you're going to use it. Your opponent has almost no idea based on the team preview, and that's why it's the last Pokemon in the A tier. So at the end of the A tier, we're over 60% of the way through our list. Are all the Pokemon you thought, are they all in here? Do you guys agree or disagree? Please go to those comments, let me know. I'm so interested in seeing what you guys have to say. I'm wondering if there's anything you think I've dropped so far, something you think I've forgotten. So we're going to be starting up the B tier with the #1 Pokemon you all think I've forgotten. I have not forgotten about it. I do not value it very highly, and we're going to be talking about it why. Of course, it's going to be Duskmane. Duskmane Necrozma, starting things off at the top of the B tier, and you're probably wondering, why is this Pokemon so low? I know there's a bunch of people that would put this Pokemon in the S tier, and this is going to be the reason. We're going to talk about the reasons why I think it's so low, and why even Solgaleo is so much higher on the list than this Pokemon is. This is the perfect example of a Pokemon that takes too many resources in a team to actually succeed. You can't really just splash a Necrozma into your team. Sure, it gets Trick Room. Sure, it, can KO Xerneas. But that's it. It's a Pokemon that can do only a couple things. They usually get, like, Photon Geyser, Sunsteel Strike. They get Wide Guard. Like, that's cool. But this Pokemon is extremely one-dimensional. You see it with the weakness policy a lot of the time. Or I haven't really seen that many Mental Orbs, but I think Mental Orb is actually really good on this Pokemon. But, more often than not, they don't even carry Protect. They carry Trick Room, Wide Guard, Sunsteel Strike, Photon Geyser. You don't see that much diversity from these things. And they're so pigeonholed into that moveset. Like, they have a moveset that, like, can't hit Steel types. There's, like, 4 Steel types in this top cut already so far. Like, Necrozma gets washed by Groudon. Necrozma gets washed by Yveltal. Necrozma gets washed by Lunala. And a lot of these other Pokemon, like even like Kyogre, Incineroar, a lot of these Pokemon just bop the Necrozma right in the face. And, it's one of those Pokemon that takes a team to be built around it to succeed. You have to surround the Necrozma with Pokemon that can let it perform to its fullest potential. And if you let it perform to its fullest potential, yeah, it's one of the best Pokemon in the game. Like, it's the 13th best Pokemon in the whole format, in a format where you can use almost any Pokemon in the game. It's still an amazing Pokemon, can win you so many games, but I just feel that it takes too many resources when building the team in general. Like, because one of your Restrictimons can only really hit, it can't really hit that many things as, like, Psychic and Steel as its big attacks. You have to surround yourself and fill in the holes to be able to hit Pokemon like Incineroar. Like, Necrozma can't necessarily hit Incineroar, the best Pokemon that's in every single format. Like, all they need to do is bring the Incineroar and mess you up. Also, if they, like, intimidate your Necrozma, that's going to throw off your whole balance with the Photon Geyser. Photon Geyser deals damage based on whatever one of your attack or special attack stats is higher. So, if you get intimidated a couple times, you might be dealing special attacks, and if you're running, like, an Adamant or a Brave Necrozma, well, most like the Adamant one, you're going to have a really low special attack. You're not going to deal any damage, and I just feel that this Pokemon can be taken advantage of too many times. Like, I feel every time I see a Necrozma, I'm like, man, I'm so happy they're using that thing. No matter what situations I have, I can always deal with that. Like, even Stakataka, I feel, can just, like, I feel Stakataka is just better because it does a lot of the same things Necrozma does. It Trick Rooms, it Wide Guards, has a huge Steel attack, but it doesn't take your restricted slot, and that is why Necrozma is so low. So going on to the next Pokemon on the list, another Pokemon you guys probably thought would be a lot higher, but, in retrospect, there's so many other Pokemon that deserve these slots. It's going to be Ludicolo, and there's going to be one thing I kind of want to talk about here. You guys are probably wondering why I've included Pokemon like Smeargle, Stakataka, Taboo Koko, Kartana, Ludicolo over other legendaries. You're probably thinking, man, where's Lugia? Man, where is Ho-Oh? Where is Palkia, Reshiram, all these other legendaries? Of course, you guys are probably thinking these legendaries would be so much higher on the list than these Pokemon. But remember, this list is totally about the resources you commit to your teams. Just because Zekrom has higher stats than Ludicolo, that does not make Zekrom a better Pokemon. It takes Zekrom to be put into the team. You have to build your team around the Zekrom. And then, if you want to bring the Zekrom every game, like, that is going to mean you have terrible matchups against certain Pokemon. You have to sacrifice so much when team building to include them in your team that I feel that it's more of a liability to include a lot of Pokemon. Even if they're the super Ubers, it takes a lot more away from the team building aspect and the freedom you have, because you pretty much in this format have to bring both your Restrictimons every single game. And since you have to bring both of them, if they are pigeonholed in a certain playstyle like Duskmane, Necrozma, or like Zekrom is, it's really going to be hard to team build. So that's why there's Pokemon that aren't necessarily legendaries, like, other than Smeargle, who's, I think, generally an exception. Ludicolo is the first not legendary Pokemon other than Incineroar, who I guess, like, is an exception to the list, because it's not a restricted mon, and it has the Swift Swim ability to be able to, just deal huge damage. It's a huge check to Kyogre. It's also a semi-check to Groudon. Like, you see a lot of Groudons play with Ludicolo. I've seen people use Sunny Day Ludicolo. It has Fake Out. It's such a good Pokemon. Gets huge stabbed Grass Knots for those two big Pokemon, Groudon and Kyogre. Also note that a lot of these Pokemon, like, look at Duskmane, Stakataka, Groudon, Kyogre, Even like Solgaleo, Lunala, Yveltal, all of them, they're incredibly heavy. These restricted mons are super, super heavy. Grass Knot deals a lot of damage. We usually see a Ludicolo built with like a Vest or a Life Orb. And if you're pairing like Ludicolo with Kyogre, you know, you get the Swift Swim, and you can just super speed creep a lot of other Pokemon. You're going to outspeed things that check the Kyogre, like Koko, like Mewtwo, like, you know, a lot of this stuff. So Kyogre, sorry, not Kyogre, Ludicolo, very good Pokemon, very standard at this point in the game. Ludicolo's been a standard, probably the best Swift Swim user for years, going all the way back. So I know we got a little bit of off topic there, but you know, we're gonna go into the next Pokemon on the list. It's gonna be another legendary, not restricted though. It's gonna be Tapu Lele, and a lot of you guys probably would include Tapu Lele a lot faster. When I showed this to my Discord earlier, a lot of them put Tapu Lele in the Kartana slot in the last Pokemon in the A tier, and I want to talk about why I don't think that Tapu Lele should necessarily be in the A tier. It's because Tapu Lele suffers from its biggest effectiveness, right, is saying like, hey, you can't fake out me, right? If you play it correctly, you know, send it out after other Tapus, like, you know, if you're using a Scarf Lele, you can't lead it if they have any Tapu, because if they lead any Tapu, they're just gonna take away your terrain, and your Tapu Lele is effectively useless, and you've shown your Scarf, which is not a good play. So if you play it correctly, and don't show your speed tiering, or at least get your Psychic terrain up, you know, what you're saying is, you can't fake out. And you know, you can always switch in the Lele, and on a fake out, to protect your teammate, to, let's say, go for like a Geomancy or a Tailwind or Trick Room or what have you. But then, you know, you're being a very defensive play. And the thing about Lele is, you can only really do like one or two things with it. You're pretty much saying, number one, you cannot use priority moves, fake out, what have you. And number two, like, hey, I can use Fairy and Psychic attacks. And sure, that's cool. Like, sure, I know it gets like Focus Blast, I know it gets Shadow Ball, I know it gets Thunderbolt, Thunder, all those things. But Lele has such a one-dimensional playstyle that at the best case scenario, if you're playing at the highest level of VGC, Lele's gonna trade 1-for-1. Lele's gonna come in, do what's like one thing, say, hey, you can't fake out, hey, I might taunt ya, watch out for that taunt, but Lele's gonna hit one of their Pokemon super hard, and then you're gonna hit the Lele right back and KO it, or clock a Sash, or what have you. Lele's effectiveness is effectively gonna be dissipated. It's not the fastest Pokemon, it's base 95, so looking at the rest of Pokemon on this list, they're all like Kartana level speed, Koko level speed. A lot of these Pokemon are holding Choice Scarfs, and sure, Lele can hold Choice Scarf too, but then if you're putting your Choice Scarf on your Lele, that means you don't have a Choice Scarf left in your team to put on your Kyogre. A lot of the items that Lele wants to hold are better optimized on other Pokemon. Kyogre's better with the Scarf, Ludicolo's better with a Life Orb. You see what I mean? Like, Lele can only do so many things without sucking the resources out of your team to make it succeed. There's better things than Lele, I think, at doing just at stopping priority moves. For example, like Lele doesn't even protect things that are flying. Like a lot of these Pokemon on this list, or maybe not a lot, but like Yveltal, you can't really go Yveltal Lele because like Yveltal's not protected by the Psychic terrain. Like it only protects things that are on the ground. So like Serena would protect Yveltal. Serena would protect anything that's not grounded using Levitate or what have you. So like Lele, I feel it's very good, but it's not required to play. Like you know, like maybe if it had like a weather type thing where it's maybe not like a weather, but if there was a way to keep the Psychic terrain on the board, I think Lele would be a lot more valuable. But since there's not, Lele, you know, falls a little bit short at number 15. Go down to number 16. Number 16, very similar Pokemon to Ludicolo, is going to be its counterpart, the Chlorophyll user Venusaur. And I've actually had some people ask me, hey, why is Venusaur on this list, but something like Victory Bell isn't, or Jumpluff isn't? Personally, I think Jumpluff's like amazing. It's one of my favorite Pokemon to use. You know, if we're talking about just the fun factor, Jumpluff's like number 1. Like Jumpluff's way cooler than Smeargle. But, you know, we're talking about Venusaur here, and we're talking about the effectiveness and how, like, tournament results have influenced this list. And Venusaur has access to Poison Stabs, as well as that huge Grass Knot that both Ludicolo gets. It's pretty much the Ludicolo counterpart for Groudon, you know? You go Venusaur, Groudon, you have access to big Sludge Bombs, big Grass Knots, like huge Grass Knots against all these big mons. But you also get Sleep Powder. So, you know, Ludicolo gets that fake out, Venusaur gets a Sleep Powder. They're both a little bit different, but I feel more often than not, Ludicolo's typing puts it above. I think that Water Grass is a little bit better defensive typing than, you know, Poison Grass is. Because, like, Poison Grass can get mollywopped by Incineroar a lot more than Ludicolo can. Also note that, like, since Incineroar is a poison type, he takes big damage. Like, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Psychic Pokemon on this list above Venusaur. You can actually see a lot of the Pokemon on this list have super effective moves against Venusaur. It's a type of Pokemon that comes in and excels based off its high speed stat when in the Chlorophyll in the sun. It can switch in on a couple attacks, but, you know, it's not really as defensive as Ludicolo, which is why it's a little bit lower on the list. Some of you guys might be actually thinking that Venusaur is a little bit too high on the list, but, you know, that's just how I see it. So we're going into the final stretch, right? The final stretch. It's going to be the end of the B tier. The end of the B tier, and we're starting off strong with another grass-type Pokemon, Grass Poison. It's going to be Amoonguss, and I feel that Amoonguss started off this format so strong. But, you know, we're actually seeing at regional level a lot of Pokemon packing safety goggles exclusively to play around Amoonguss. And, you know, a well-timed safety goggles, like a safety goggles Incineroar, a safety goggles Stakataka, a safety goggles restricted Pokemon, if they're going to commit that to do that. If you go for a Spore or a Rage Powder and they safety goggles you and KO the thing they want to KO, you automatically lose. Like, that game is a game 1 loss, and I feel that just because of that, Amoonguss has lost like a lot of playability. It's not as safe to use Amoonguss anymore. You know, if I were to lead Stakataka and your answer to Stakataka is Amoonguss to Spore me to stop my trick and I have safety goggles, well, you just lost, bro. Like, you got absolutely nothing to do against my stock. I will grind you to a halt. And so Amoonguss still being a very good Pokemon. Remember, it gets that Clear Smog. It gets Redirection with Rage Powder, which isn't as good as Follow Me, but, you know, it gets, you know, it gets Grass Knot just like all these other things, and it's a very good Pokemon. It gets Spore. It's one of the best Spore users in the game, but I feel that it just has lost a lot of playability compared to a lot of these other mons. As the meta has developed, we've started to see people playing around the Amoonguss, and again, it follows the same type of things that Venusaur does, is that, let's look at it. So Incineroar is good against it. Groudon's good against it. Smeargle is in a better version, because remember, you can Lovely Kiss an Amoonguss, which a lot of people have been using with Smeargle. It's so good. Kyogre, not too great, but, you know, Amoonguss has to react to the Kyogre. Like, Amoonguss doesn't actually want to eat the Water Spout if you're at full HP with Kyogre. Lunala can one-shot it. You know, what is it? Yveltal has Oblivion Wing, Taunts, all those good things, big damage. Solgaleo stabbed, Zen Headbutt, Flare Blitz, good damage. Mewtwo can one-shot it. Staka usually carries the safety goggles. Koko sets the electric terrain, which means you can't Spore anything, which is Koko's like a main competitor to Amoonguss, and it's so good against it. Kartana, you can't Spore or Rage Powder Kartana since it's a grass type. Necrozma can one-shot. Ludicolo, a grass type. So you can't redirect it again. Lele can one-shot Venusaur, another grass type. So looking at it, almost every single Pokemon on this list is made to take apart Amoonguss. Like, Amoonguss is actually one of the factors in why these Pokemon are so popular, because Amoonguss was in almost every single team when the format started. But, you know, just because Amoonguss is not that great against all of these Pokemon, it's better than like 90% of the other Pokemon in the game. Like, Amoonguss is the Pokemon that if you play it right, you bring it out, throw up your directions, throw up your Spores, do whatever you're going to do. You can win any game with Amoonguss if you play it correctly. So it's definitely really good. Like, I'm just going to think of a random Pokemon right now, Gigalith. Like, you know, you could Spore the heck out of a Gigalith. You could Grass Knot the heck out of a Gigalith. Like, or even Trantar for that matter. Like, Amoonguss bodies Pokemon like that. And it makes so this Pokemon can't even, like, play the game. So Amoonguss has, like, it creates a barrier, which is why it's still included in this list. It creates a barrier for entry to even play the format. So it's good enough to be in the list, but, you know, it's going to need to struggle to stay on top. So going up next on the list, this is going to be a Pokemon a lot of people probably wouldn't even include in their list, but I think it's amazing right now. I think this Pokemon is amazing to do so many things. It's going to be Tapu Fini. And Tapu Fini is so good because let's look at the top of the list. Incineroar, numero uno. Fini is amazing in Incineroar. It is the #1 competitor to Incineroar. You know, you have water attacks. Fairy attacks are neutral. And all of Incineroar's attacks don't do anything. The best thing he can do is knock off your item. And if you're running like a Seeds Fini or, you know, something that uses its item relatively early, Incineroar can't do anything to you. You will win every time. Against Xerneas, Fini packs Haze. So you can stop Xerneas and Incineroar, the two #1 Pokemon in the format, with just Fini. It's just that easy. Against Groudon, you know, you don't really want to use water attacks, but, you know, you could always Scald a Groudon. Groudon's not a fire type. You could burn it. And if you burn it, it's easy. And also, Moonblast is neutral damage. Like, Groudon has to go for P-Blades on you, and, you know, you're totally fine. And remember, Fini's, like, terrain makes it a great Pokemon to beat things like Smeargle. No Lovely Kisses, no Spores, no nothing like that. No shenanigans with Fini. Also note that Fini's good paired with all of those Pokemon, like, paired with the Groudon. You know, Gravity Swagger Fini. We saw Wolf Glick do that at Memphis Regionals. Like, Fini is so good. It doesn't need Trick Room. It has just what it needs. It has Icy Wind for speed control. It has Moonblast for damage. Scalds if you want to go for that route. It can use Protects. It's a great use of the berries. And Fini is so good. It is definitely in most teams I'm building with right now. And for those of you guys that know me, I was not a big Fini user for the past 2 years. Like, in the past 2 formats, no, I'm not about Fini. But in this format, Feeny is like the Swiss Army knife that can solve any issue in this format. It does so. It's good against Ogre. It's good against. Look at all the Pokemon on this list. Like Feeny will not get one-shotted by them if you play it correctly, and can stabilize on the board, to give you the terrain that you want, so they can't hax you out. Feeny is the safest play. Sure, you're committing a little, you're overcommitting a little bit of your offense, but it's a safe switch in. Like if you need to wait out any form of speed control, Tailwind or Trick Room, Feeny can switch in. Its typing is exactly what you need if you build your team correctly. It can wait it out, use Protect, switch back out into something else. You've wasted like 3 or 4 turns of their speed control, and you might even be able to apply your own speed control with use of Icy Wind or being able to haze to take away boosts and stuff like that. Feeny is so good, and this Pokemon's only going to be more used as the format goes on. Going on to the 19th Pokemon in our list here. It's going to be Ferrothorn. A lot of you guys probably thought this Pokemon was going to be a lot higher, and I actually didn't really want to include it in my list, but you know, when you're playing games, the one Pokemon that kind of changes the dynamic of the game other than Smeargle is like, you're looking at your teams, it's like, alright, well, oh man, they have a Ferrothorn. That means I'm going to have to bring something that can deal with that, or otherwise Ferrothorn is a Pokemon that can go 1v4, even against these uber restrictive mons. Like, let's even just like, Kyogre doesn't want to fight Ferrothorn. Mewtwo doesn't even really want to fight Ferrothorn. Like, Necrozma doesn't want to fight Ferrothorn. Yveltal, like, could fight Ferrothorn, doesn't want to. Like, and even if like Solgaleo has the Flare Blitz, he's going to take so much damage from the recoil and the Iron Barbs, and you might even have Rocky Helmet. Like, none of these Pokemon, other than Groudon, that's a restricted mon, really wants to fight the Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn is an amazing Pokemon. It's great against Trick Room. Like, you can have a hyper-aggressive team and just a Ferrothorn in your team for, like, a Trick Room mode. So, in case they Trick Room you, you're ready, willing, and able with the Ferrothorn to win the game. Ferrothorn doesn't really need to have that much stuff talked about it. It has great typing. It pairs very well with Kyogre, so you can use Kyogre's Rain to make it so even if they use like a fire type attack on you, they're not going to get any KOs. So Ferrothorn's only going to see more use as the format evolves, because actually if we look at this team, we look at all these Pokemon, we're actually not seeing a lot of fighting attacks. That's the one thing in this format that I think is different from previous years. We're not seeing a lot of fighting attacks. We're seeing a lot of Pokemon use fire attacks to solve a lot of the same problems. You know, let's look at like Stakataka. In previous formats, you just hit it with a fighting attack. But, you know, we're seeing a lot of ground attacks and a lot of fire attacks be used to take out Stakatakas. People are using like Reshurams, Groudons, Incineroars, for example, to take out Stakataka instead of just using you know, fighting attacks. Not a lot of these Pokemon really use them that often. Even Pokemon like Incineroar that get access to like fighting attacks aren't really using. I think the most common fighting type attack in the game is Sacred Sword on Kartana, and that requires you to use a Kartana. And even if you were to have like Sacred Sword Kartana, you don't necessarily even want to fight Ferrothorn. So, you know, Ferrothorn's a pretty good Pokemon. It definitely deserves its spot on the list, and most people would probably put it even higher. So, the last Pokemon on the list, the 20th Pokemon, I had to think long and hard about this. What is the last Pokemon I want to highlight, you know? There's so many other things. There's so many more restricted mons that I haven't even talked about that could be so good. And I felt I had to include it. A lot of you guys are probably thinking it's Lugia, but it's actually going to be its counterpart, Ho-Oh. I think Ho-Oh is so good right now. It does a lot of the same things that Groudon does, but it doesn't require the same amount of babysitting that Groudon does. You know, Groudon's pretty cool, but if you have a Groudon on the board and they like switch in their Ogre, like, if they get a free switch into their Ogre, like you KO'd something and bring out their Ogre, you need to switch your Groudon out. Like, your Groudon can't really fight that. Groudon can't really set any sort of things other than, like, substitute to preserve itself. Like, Groudon can't really, you know, defend itself. It's a requirement on teammates to pin opponents so Groudon can come in and succeed. Whereas Ho-Oh has access to, like, Tailwind, Sacred Fire. We see a lot of Seeds Ho-Oh, so they don't take that big damage from Incineroar's knockoff. And Ho-Oh, I actually feel, is one of the Pokemon that actually can really check Incineroar. Not because it deals big damage to Incineroar. I've seen a lot of Ho-Ohs use Toxic recently, but it's that Incineroar can't deal damage to Ho-Oh. And another thing is, like, Ho-Oh's good against Lunala, it's good against Solgaleo, it's good against Mewtwo, it's good against Necrozma. Ho-Oh's good against most of the Pokemon on this list. Most of them. It's even okay against Koko, because you can like tunnel them into attacking you. It is a form of speed control, and Ho-Oh's one of those Pokemon that can, kind of like Ferrothorn, win games all by itself. It forces your opponent to respect the Ho-Oh and bring a lot of things to exclusively hit it. We don't actually see any rock moves in this format, barring like Stakatakas sometimes still carry Rock Slide. You're not seeing a lot of Stone Edges. Every once in a while, you see Rock Slide or Stone Edge from Groudon, and if you're intimidating the Groudon, using the Electric Seeds, or just playing your Ho-Oh correctly with use of like Wide Guard from teammates, they usually can't even hit your Ho-Oh. And then Ho-Oh, all it has to do is get one Sacred Fire on the Groudon, get the burn on it, and then you're just going to be able to wall that thing out forever. So this is my list. This is the top 20 Pokemon in the Sun Series VGC 2019. Guys, I want to know, is it exactly what you thought it was? Is it everything you thought it would be? Like, leave your team in the comments below. I want to know exactly what your tiers are. I want to know exactly what your team. You don't even have to stop at 20. You can go all the way down. You can list your top 800 Pokemon, and I want to see them. I want to see how you grade everything, guys. Please let me know if you agree or disagree with my list, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.